Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to give you guys my first impressions on this Blackmagic 6K full frame. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at this Blackmagic 6K full frame. So I'm mostly a wedding photographer from the Chicagoland area, and I dabble in some video work. So if it's your first time on my channel, make sure to subscribe. So the Blackmagic 6K full frame. So most of you guys might have heard about this camera, but this is my first Blackmagic camera. So I've heard about the Blackmagic 4K, Pocket 4K, Pocket 6K, 6K Pro. So they've made a name for themselves in Super 35 cameras that kind of fit in your pocket, but they've been getting bigger and bigger over the years. So I think the original 4K was the true pocket camera, and the new cameras are a lot bigger, but they still pack a lot of punch for their size, and they just produce awesome image. So a big pro with Blackmagic cameras is that they can shoot RAW. So they shoot Blackmagic RAW, and most of the other ones also shoot ProRes. So it's a great camera for most workflows. Those cameras are, and a lot of run and gun documentary filmmakers been using those cameras for years. So when you rig out those cameras, they're kind of known for bad battery life. So when you rig them out, they get a lot bigger, but they're still great cameras. So but yeah, let's talk about the Blackmagic 6K full frame. So when this came out for the MSRP, it was very expensive. It doesn't have true continuous autofocus. It has one-shot autofocus. So for that price, I needed other cameras for my wedding work. So I picked up the ZVE1. I have the A7 IV as my primary photography slash hybrid camera. So I just needed other cameras, so I couldn't justify spending MSRP for this camera. But recently, this camera has been on sale. So for the price they were at, I just couldn't pass it up. So I picked up the Blackmagic 6K full frame, and honestly, I'm very impressed in what this camera offers. So it still doesn't have great battery life. You can get under an hour on a battery, and it only shoots in Blackmagic RAW. So the files are very big, but there's a lot of different compression ratios, and you can shoot in constant bitrate or quality. And there's different bitrate and quality options to kind of produce the file size you might need. So like I mentioned, the battery life will last you around an hour, and depending on the compression and everything, 512 gigabyte card will also give you around an hour of video. So these are very big sizes. This camera does not shoot ProRes. It only shoots Blackmagic RAW. So obviously, in the name, it's a 6K cinema camera. So they kind of pushed with the whole cinema thing. And honestly, Blackmagic RAW is an amazing codec, and it's an amazing image it produces. So pros for this camera, obviously 6K sensor. So this does not have image stabilization, but with a 6K sensor, you can kind of crop in and stabilize it. This does write gyro data when you shoot. So when you get into DaVinci, you can stabilize this footage. And honestly, I was very impressed at the stabilization that it can produce with the gyro data. So it doesn't have built-in sensor stabilization, but with the gyro data, you get very smooth footage. Another big thing, shoots open gate. So with open gate, you can kind of shoot vertical footage or horizontal. You can crop it to different sizes. If you guys don't know what open gate is, open gate, it basically shoots on an entire sensor. So a lot of cameras don't shoot on an entire sensor, a lot of hybrid cameras. So on photography side, you get a different aspect ratio than on the video side. So on this, you can shoot open gate. It's a very big image, and you can crop it to whatever aspect ratio your film, documentary, or whatever project you're working on. You can crop it to that size. So this also has an OLED sensor, filter. So it helps with moire, and it helps with different image issues. So if you have patterns that are very close together, this kind of helps with things like that. So it's a cool feature that they added, but it might not be a deal breaker for most people with other cameras when they don't have it. So a big difference with this camera than other Blackmagic cameras, this is a Leica L mount instead of the EF mount. So when I seen this camera has a Leica L mount, I was very impressed, and I was very curious. So I've never had any camera with the Leica L mount. Obviously, there's the L mount Alliance, which Panasonic, Leica, and somebody else makes lenses with the L mount, and it kind of makes the lens family a lot bigger. So I was very happy this had an L mount. The previous one had an EF mount. Obviously, everyone loves the Canon EF. It's been around for years, but I feel like Canon EF lenses are still very expensive. I shoot with Sony, and I think I can get better quality lenses for the Sony E mount than an EF mount. The EF mount is a very old mount. Most of the lenses are kind of more for photography than video work, especially with autofocus. You hear the focusing motors. So I was very happy this came with an L mount. I think it's a better mount. It's a newer mount. You can get great lenses for great prices. So this also uses CF Express Type B cards, which I think that's a great choice. Some Sony cameras use CF Express Type A. Type B is a lot more common of a size, so it's a lot better of a media in today's day and age. So CF Express Type B cards went down in price recently, so you can get them for very affordable prices, and most high-end cameras that require these fast read and write speeds use a CF Express Type B. So I think it's a great media for this camera. The only con I can think of that is it only has one slot. So if you're a professional, for example, I shoot weddings, so I kind of prefer cameras that have dual slots. So when I use this for weddings, I'm probably going to use an SSD mounted to it and a card. So this way I can write to two places. And yeah, if you guys didn't know, you can use an SSD like a Samsung T5 to write media to. So you can use the card, you can use your external SSD, and you kind of have like dual slots in that way. You're writing to two places. And yeah, and if you don't want to buy CF Express Type B cards, you can just get hard drives. Obviously, you have to mount them some way. And cages for this camera aren't very common right now. I was looking for some cages for this camera. I know SmallRig is creating a cage for it. I think you can pre-order it right now. And also the SmallRig G2 cage for the 6K G2 fits on this, but it's not a perfect fit. So they're making a cage for this right now. So if you guys have any recommendations on cages, please let me know in the comments and I'll take a look. But yeah, it's still a great solution that it lets you shoot to an SSD and also the CF Express Type B. So yeah, this has dual native ISO. A lot of cameras have dual native ISO. And if you guys don't know what that is, it has ISO 400 and 3200. So if you shoot at those ISOs, your image will be cleaner than the ISOs in between. So for example, if you shoot at 3000, 3200 will be a lot cleaner because at that ISO, the sensor and the noise reduction and everything kind of cleans up the image. So try and stay in the native ISOs for this camera and other cameras that have dual native ISOs. But yeah, that was very, very awesome. They did that. 3200 isn't like Sony 12800, but it's still a good addition and you can shoot in some low light situations. Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with Blackmagic Raw, it's very easy to color grade. DaVinci is the industry standard for color grading. So it's shooting Blackmagic Raw is a very good feature. And I've wanted a camera that shoots RAW for a very long time, but Red has a patent on compressed RAW. So a lot of camera makers can't just put compressed RAW in their camera. So it's kind of complicated. Some Canon cameras have RAW. Sony cameras shoot RAW to external recorders. I don't know of any Sony cameras that shoot compressed RAW internally, probably because of that Red patent. So it's shooting RAW internal to this camera. It was a very big point for me to buy this camera. I've always wanted RAW. If you don't have the correct white balance, you don't have the correct ISO, you can fix those things in post, and it just makes your life so much easier. It's kind of like a fail-safe. Like I mentioned, having two cards, shooting in RAW, it just gives you an out if you had the wrong white balance when shooting a video, or you had the wrong ISO, you can just fix it in post. So it's shooting RAW is amazing, and it not shooting ProRes. It'd be nice if you want to shoot to a smaller file, but you're buying this camera for these big files and these cinematic looking footage, so it makes sense that it shoots a Blackmagic Raw and it doesn't shoot anything else. You can also load custom LUTs into this camera. It has a very big screen on this camera. So with the very big screen, it's awesome and outside, so you kind of don't have to mount a screen to or anything to this. I have a NATO rail here. So when I shoot like these YouTube videos, I have a screen pointed at me. So that's the only reason I use a screen. But when I shoot this outside, I just use the included screen. It's a touch screen. It's very responsive. Blackmagic menus are some of the easiest menus I've ever used. So obviously, like I mentioned, I shoot Sony. Sony menus aren't great. I've shot Sony for years, and sometimes I'm looking for a feature I want to change that I don't usually change, and I just don't remember, where it is. I was on a shoot a couple weeks ago. My LCD, I had the touch function off on my LCD, and I just couldn't find how to turn touch point autofocus back on my screen. So I had to go on YouTube real quick and try and figure out how to turn it on. So with this Blackmagic menu system and this camera, it's so easy, it's so intuitive. You don't have to scroll through, 36 menus like Sony has. So it makes it very easy, and I wish all cameras had like as easy of a menu system as this Blackmagic camera has. So another con some people may have with this camera, the 6K Pro has built-in NDs. So this camera does not have built-in NDs, but you can get just variable NDs. So I got variable NDs for all the lens sizes I have for this camera. So I have this 35 millimeter fully manual lens for this one, and I also got the 50 millimeter Panasonic Lumix lens that has autofocus, so I can utilize the one-shot autofocus with that lens. But yeah, I got variable NDs for both of those, and it's not a huge deal. Like I mentioned, I had the Canon C100 Mark II before. It had built-in NDs. The FS7 I had built-in NDs. So built-in NDs are amazing, and they kind of save you if you don't have your variable NDs. There's been plenty of times that I was shooting outside, and I brought the wrong NDs or the wrong stops of NDs, and I was like, the shoot is kind of ruined without these NDs. So having NDs, built-in NDs, kind of saves you in those situations. So I regret this doesn't have it, but obviously you can get variable NDs. What they mentioned, that with the L mount, they couldn't fit NDs inside of this camera. So yeah, it's not huge. I think the L mount is a better mount than an EF mount. It's a newer mount. You can get way more lenses for it than the older EF lenses that were, noisy with autofocus and everything. So it's not a huge deal, but some might think it's a con. And obviously, this is more of a mirrorless size type of camera. Obviously, it's a little bit bigger than mirrorless cameras. But those cameras I mentioned, the C100, the FS7, are big boxy cameras. And there's other big boxy cameras that Blackmagic has that have built-in NDs. So it's not a big issue. But yeah, no built-in NDs. So yeah, if you're gonna pick up this camera, I recommend getting at least a 1 terabyte CF Express Type B card, or shoot to a Samsung T5 drive, preferably 2 terabytes. So yeah, big file sizes. So yeah, 1 terabyte, and also Blackmagic makes this battery grip. So 2 batteries fit inside of this, and the third battery is inside the camera. So if you're gonna shoot with this camera, I recommend the battery grip and at least a 1 terabyte of media to get around 2 hours of footage with the media, and you can get over 2 hours of recording time with 3 batteries. So yeah, that will solve most of your issues with this camera, and you're gonna love this camera. Produces amazing cinematic video, and focusing on this camera makes it so easy. It has false colors, focus assist. So with this big vivid screen on the back, manual focusing isn't a big deal. It has all the features you might have for cinema work. So yeah, amazing camera. I highly recommend this camera. Anyone trying to get into video, cinema work, shooting documentaries, wedding films, you can kind of set this up on a tripod. You can, set up a focusing system for your Ronin with this camera, and you're gonna get amazing footage, especially with open gate. You're gonna get that big picture, and you can crop it however you want for social media, for TikTok, Instagram. There's just so many options with this camera. It just kind of steps up your cinematic game. So yeah, highly recommend this camera. If you guys have any tips for me, I just got it, or if you have any questions for me, let me know. But yeah, amazing camera. Thank you for checking out this video, and stay tuned for more.